My dad was born April 21st, 1931, in Dorchester, Mass. He was raised in a musical household and started out playing trumpet like his father, but eventually settled on piano as his main instrument. He was also a dedicated member of the Boy Scouts of America, achieving their coveted Eagle Scout rank and even becoming a member of the exclusive Order of the Arrow. The discipline and organization he learned in the Boy Scouts is something he continued to practice his whole life, as anyone who knew him can attest. A place for everything and everything in its place was more than just a catchphrase for him. It was a way of life. After graduating from Boston English High School, my dad went on to Boston University majoring in music. This despite being told by one of his former piano teachers that he had no talent and would never make a living as a musician. He met many good friends and played out in some local bands during his college years and seemed to like wearing his hair like a young Frank Sinatra. He also directed the Massachusetts National Guard 86th Army Band, which gave him a taste for what would later become his full-time career. After graduating from BU and attempting a brief career as a draftsman for Honeywell and Raytheon, the town of North Reading had the good sense to hire him as a music teacher back in the late 1950s. He proceeded to build one of the premier public school music programs in Massachusetts, basically from scratch. From very humble beginnings in the early 60s, my dad was able to nurture and cultivate scores of talented musicians, many of whom went on to have successful musical careers of their own. With highly competitive marching, concert, and jazz bands, he made North Reading music programs a force to be reckoned with over his close to 4 decades of dedicated service. He touched so many lives that when he announced his retirement in 1996, alumni musicians from across the country came to play for him in an impromptu marching band for his final Thanksgiving Day field show. Here you can see them all paying homage to the leader of the band in the chilly autumn air all those years ago. The school district also honored him when they rebuilt the high school by designating the Performance Arts Wing as the Harold Weisse Music Center. Of course, being the multi-talented musician that he was, it was not enough to simply be the music director for an entire school district. Instead, my dad continued to be a gigging musician in the Boston area for many years, playing countless weddings, parties, bar mitzvahs, and other special events with a host of local musicians. In fact, he continued to play out in the Nashua, New Hampshire area up until a few years ago. He was also drafted to direct choirs at several area churches, St. Teresa's and First Baptist of Nashua among them, always managing to coax tremendous musical performances out of people simply by choosing interesting and challenging music that they liked to sing. He also worked tirelessly to help prepare musicians and singers for countless musical theater productions over the years, as well, including most recently the Nashua Senior Center Chorus. In fact, I would venture to guess that my dad has never said no to anyone who asked his help with anything musical or most anything else, I'd venture. He got a lot of satisfaction out of helping people. He was such a Boy Scout. Of course, to my sisters and me, he was also just Dad. Despite all of his professional accomplishments, he always managed to find time for us. Whether it was camping every summer in the wilds of Maine, playing silly games around the house, or changing diapers and burping us, he was truly a Renaissance dad. In fact, I would say he was a dad ahead of his time. Well, in addition to passing along his love of music to his 3 children, he did the same for his 6 grandchildren and great-grandson. He enjoyed playing music for them, but mostly just playing silly games with them. Whether it was comforting them when they fell down and let out a big-mouth cry, or encouraging them to run around the room in a crazy dance while he hammered out a frantic rendition of That's a Plenty on the piano, Gramps always enjoyed spending time with his grandchildren. Over the years, he bestowed on them numerous noise and music-making toys, much to their parents' dismay, and seemed to get a real kick out of infecting them with his own musical interests. My children still fondly remember a CD of old Spike Jones recordings that my dad gave them years ago, and it still makes them laugh. His musical legacy lives on in them, as well as countless other former students whose lives he touched. In addition to his kids and grandchildren, though, Dad was also fortunate to have another special person come into his life. After our mom passed away in 2001, Dad moved to his house in Nashua and began building a new life there. Not long after that, while directing the Nashua Senior Center Chorus, his path came across Irene Gordon. Their friendship blossomed over the years, and they soon became inseparable until Irene's untimely passing almost 8 years ago. Few people get a second chance at love, and my dad was one of them. In addition to being a musician, teacher, husband, father, grandfather, and companion, my dad was also a wanderer. He loved to travel, as the metric tons of travel photos lining his bookshelves can attest. Hiking and mountain climbing were his great passion, and he always seemed to be on the go. That's what made the last few years so difficult for him, as he gradually lost the mobility that he so cherished. But now he's back on the road again, free from the bonds of physical infirmity and able to roam wherever he wants. And that should give us all a sense of solace. If my dad could speak to us all, I'm sure he would encourage us not to be sad or weep, but to celebrate and be hopeful, because he is truly free. Well, back in March of this year, I had the good fortune to capture my dad on video, reminiscing about his Boy Scout days, singing songs around the campfire. Here he is, treating me to a call-and-response rendition of a spiritual, I Ain't Gonna Grieve No More, My Lord. If you listen closely, you can hear him sing, If you get to heaven, before I do, just bore a hole and pull me through. I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more, I ain't gonna grieve no more, I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more, I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more. Then he goes on, oh, you can't get to heaven in my old car, 'cause the gosh darn thing won't go that far. And then my personal favorite, you can't get to heaven in a limousine, 'cause the Lord don't sell no gasoline. And then he ends it with, I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more. So just take a listen.
It's part of their religious belief system is that all relatives are reunited in heaven, and you can pray apostate relatives into heaven even after their death.
It's an old camp song. If you get them before I do, just bore a hole and pull me through.
Yeah, I've never heard that one.
No, it's a tune. Oh no, it was a call and response. If you get to heaven, and they say, if you get to heaven, before I do,
Bore a hole.
no, I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more. I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more. I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more. Oh, you can't get to heaven in my old car, 'cause the gosh darn thing won't go that far. Oh, you can't get to heaven in my old car, 'cause the gosh darn thing won't go that far. Or you can't get to heaven in a limousine, 'cause God, Lord don't sell no gasoline. You can't get to heaven in a limousine, 'cause the Lord don't sell no gasoline. I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more. And then, if you get to heaven, before I do. Just bore a hole and pull me through. I ain't.
Is this from the National Guard? Is this what you were doing when you were doing
Boy Scouts.
Boy Scouts?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Camps
cool.
on singing around the thing. And some of the songs are. It's
God, that's hilarious.
uh,
That's got to be on the internet somewhere.
As sure as I'm his son, I know my dad would want this to be the thought that he leaves with all of us. To keep on singing and finding joy through music till the very end, because I ain't gonna grieve my Lord no more.